Namaste and welcome to the second season of Future Fit Corporates. My name is Bhavana Issar and I'm the founder CEO of Caregiver Saathi. In this season, we are going global and shifting the narrative. Caregiving is not a career obstacle or something that organizations must accommodate. It's a leadership accelerator. And through candid conversations with corporate leaders, consultants, and change makers, we explore how caregiving shapes resilience, empathy, and innovation. Let's discover what it truly takes to build workplaces that don't just include caregivers, but recognize that caregiving experience is an asset. Because the future of work is not just tech, female, or inclusive, it's compassionate, it's innovative, and therefore caregiver friendly. Welcome to Future Fit Corporates. Greetings of the day. Welcome to yet another conversation on Future Fit Corporates. As you're aware, Future Fit Corporates is our initiative from Caregiver Saathi to talk about how is it that organizations need to start reimagining workplaces that are resilient and innovative as times are changing, while continuing to invest in people and nurture success. In our changing times, it is increasingly important for leaders to think about how they are shaping workplaces. The success of an organization is intricately tied to the well-being and satisfaction of its workforce. And Future Fit Corporates is an initiative aimed at fostering workplaces that are future ready with a corporate culture that enables inclusion, diversity, and much more. The initiative seeks to facilitate meaningful conversations between CEOs, leaders, and HR heads through video interviews, podcasts, and written responses. The goal is to explore, discuss, and champion the integration of employees, employee well-being into the core fabric of corporate strategy. It is my pleasure today to welcome a very dear friend, Dr. Sangita, with whom we will be having a conversation about Future Fit Corporates. Welcome, Sangita.
Thank you so much, Bhavana, for having me on board. I feel that what you're doing is something which is very, very pertinent to not just future fit organizations, but for current organizations, because what you are talking on about and bringing in conversations from across the board is on employee well-being, caregivers well-being, and how employees are also caregivers, and how we must incorporate all their requirements while we are also building our business and making it profitable. So thank you so much.
All right, it is my pleasure to welcome Dr. Sangita Thakur, who is the founder of Ashtavakra Accessibility Solutions, a social enterprise devoted to furthering the inclusion of persons with disabilities. She has over 30 years of diverse experience spanning media and communications in industry, working as a strategic consultant on content, communication, and media. Her past stints include leadership roles in advertising, public relations, corporate communications, development communications, news media, B2B media, content marketing, branding, and social media. She has worked in Hindustan Times, Lexicon Public Relations, and the Government of Delhi, among others. Her last stint with 9.9 Group as a group editor and managing editor, leading various verticals, working with clients including India Brand Equity Foundation, Microsoft, MBD Group, and Amway. She has worked with leadership communities, including top CFOs and CIOs of India. She also provides content, editorial, and marketing content consulting services. Our clients include the Government of Jharkhand, Directorate General of Lighthouses and Lightships, Ministry of Shipping, Government of India, TV18 Group, UNDP, GIZ, Parivartan, Takshila Foundation, and Unilever. She's an alumni of Amity University, having done her PhD there, Delhi University from LSR, and Indian Institute of Mass Communication, New Delhi. Through her professional journey, Sangita has worked in the disability sector as a votary of equity and inclusion of persons with disabilities. She was a media representative East in the Rehabilitation Council of India and was listed in the Directory of Developmental Journalists published by PII. She has participated in various panel discussions, conferences, and podcasts on disability and development and conducted awareness and sensitization workshops for bureaucrats. I can go on and on about her work and a variety of accomplishments and achievements that she has. What is really special to me is that I have been very inspired by her relentless videos on LinkedIn, where she speaks about how India is far from being an inclusive place for people with mobility challenges. In my recent meeting with her, we tried to find a cafe and had to change where we could meet because the cafe didn't have a decent ramp or a lift. And here we are trying to shape future fit corporates, workplaces that are beyond disabilities. Welcome, Sangita.
Thank you so much, Bhavana, for having me on board. And I really feel that the introduction about me was pretty long. Coming back to what you just spoke about, how important it is for our built environment, our digital environment to be accessible to include people with disabilities and also elderly and neurodivergent. So we have a whole different categories of people who are so badly underserved in society because we have for long decades, maybe even centuries, overlook their needs, their requirements. And as you quoted, that cafe is just one example of the kind of accessibility challenges that we encounter when we go out in the public. And what is the biggest impediment in a way in becoming mainstream and coming out and showing our faces to the public. And because we are not visible in the public, we have become the invisible millions. So not many people are aware that our kind of people exist because for long the idea of people with disabilities has been so closely intertwined with that of a charity lens that we have always been thought of those who need pity and who need sympathy, but never as contemporaries, as peers who are equally talented and equally willing to give out access to the government and become a real big economic section of society.
In the same conversation that we met at that cafe, which had slightly better accessibility, we spoke briefly about your mom, who has been instrumental in being the primary caregiver to you and your brother. And today you have such an incredible voice. So first, respects to your mom. And as we begin this conversation, and second, please tell us, how do you relate with the idea of caregivers, caregiving, and Caregiver Saathi?
Caregiving has been something which I have grown up with because my mother was alone looking after 4 kids. I have 2 elder sisters who don't have any disabilities. However, my brother and I both have disabilities, and I have 2 disabilities or multiple disabilities now with age. However, my mother managed to look after all of us. She was a great mom, a great caregiver, and also looked after my father very well, who was a lot older than her. So, my idea of caregiving has been so aligned to my mother's role in looking after us that, as we had discussed that day, since we don't have any Hindi equivalent for caregiver, for all of us, the first person who comes to mind as a caregiver is a mother. So, my mom not only looked after us as growing up, but then when my brother had an operation, a life-threatening one, and then he kind of lost all his mobility. Then she devoted the next 10 years to looking after him totally. His every need was being served by her, but at the same time, she did not neglect me, because I also needed her care. I also needed all the care that she was giving to my brother, maybe to a lesser extent. But she was always present, and I was such a child, being the youngest one, like always throwing tantrums, even when I started working and I was at home. And it was my expectation that when I returned from office, my mom should be at home. And if she wouldn't be at home, I would be, Hindi में बोलते हैं ना गाल फुला के रहना, तो I would be really offended that she wasn't at home. Uh, because I just wanted to go back to her after working in office for a long time. And she would be there with my food, maybe in evening. I mean, I used to do that time 11 to 5 shift. And she would be there ensuring that I had my hot cup of tea. I love tea. And I used to eat these leftover rotis, which are my favorite, with a lot of amul butter rolled in between. So she ensured that she was there, and then only she would go. Even if she was outside with her friends, I mean, evening she used to spend time with her friends in the society. She'd be watching that my daughter is going to come back home and she's going to look for me. So you can see, caregiving to me is something which is so personal. It is so deep that the person who's the recipient of that caregiving can only understand what exactly it is. However, not to say that my father wasn't a caregiver, because when I started doing the night shift, which was the graveyard shift, which we call, so I used to go to office at 5 p.m. and return by 2 a.m. in the morning. So that time my
Wow.
mother would not be up. It was my father. He used to wait for me to come back home. And though my mom used to keep my food on the table, he would be around to help me heat it up. And he would stay till I finished my dinner, and then used to ensure that I've gone to bed before he went to bed. So I've seen both sides of caregiving, and I'm really grateful to my parents for that.
Yeah, and it's such a myth to think that women are better caregivers. I think women are just expected to be caregivers, and it's good to honor our caregivers. And our tears are our best way of honoring our caregivers. So thank you for that. Um, and you know, visible disabilities mean that there is a caregiver that is required, and the caregiver has their own challenges. What is your intention for our conversation today?
The intention of this conversation is the fact that I like the topic of your podcast, because you are working on something which as a person with disability who has worked in the corporate space, I have a deep understanding of the requirement that is there in the corporate space. And that is, not mandates, not compliances, but a real understanding of what a corporate needs to do, not just something on paper. And I feel that this is a platform, and the kind of conversations that we have, it has a very wide reach, and we can actually reach out to leadership in organizations, and perhaps influence their thought processes, and maybe sensitize them to understand, and also bring that understanding to their own organizations, because inclusion is a top-down approach. It's not from bottom up. It's the leadership which sets the tone of how you're going to, perceive people, those who have different abilities, how you're going to ensure that they are assimilated in the culture of your organization, and how you will set the tone for treating them, understanding their requirements, and not be dismissive of their requirements or their limitations. So that's my intention.
Thank you. I'm glad to share that intention with you. And so let's take that as the first thing. Why do you think it is important for organizations to be inclusive to start with?
The world is changing. You can see that since 2015, when the government of India launched Accessible India campaign, and with the intention of bringing the most underserved amongst the marginalized in the national thought space. So that was Accessible India campaign, and we are very grateful to Prime Minister Modi for actually, seeding inclusion in the national DNA. That was the start. Then came the laws, and we have the RPWD Act 2016, which is one of the most progressive laws in the global south. Then we came up with the HESS guidelines, which is for the built environment accessibility. In 2021, it was finally, published and made final. We also have in between the GIGW, which is for, websites and apps, the digital accessibility. And you'll find that the government has laid the ground for laws and regulations which are stringent. The mandate exists. Implementation part has been slow, specifically in the infrastructural accessibility space. But when we talk about digital accessibility, you'll be surprised how the government has been pushing it across its own ministries and departments and even private organizations. And basically, also because there is a very devoted coterie of uh, disabled advocates and activists, those who are also lawyers. So they are taking these cases up, and the notices from CCPD and the Supreme Court are following. And now even SEBI has come up with a very, very stringent guideline, which is asking all financial institutions to be accessible, digitally accessible. So you can see that inclusion cannot now be something which you do through your CSR and you can be selective about it. No, now you need to do it, and you need to go beyond the compliance, because our laws itself have ensured that we are not just ticking against compliance checklists, because they're so comprehensive that they require you to work in every direction to ensure that you are accessible. And therefore, inclusion, we have been working for inclusion through the DEI mandate, but up till now it was Div Women, LGBTQ plus came on the scene. But even the government of India has in its has accepted, acceded, and highlighted that people with disabilities have been the most forgotten among this last. So inclusion has to be there. Plus, there is also something called purple economy, which we talk of. So the thing is that uh, people with disabilities or their families have never been taken as people, those who have money to spend, who can be consumers, who may actually want to buy things which you have on your website. Now, if a person is blind and cannot access your website, or they have low vision and they are not accessing your website, then how are they going to shop on your website? So that makes your digital accessibility absolutely essential. Similarly, if you have a mall which is not accessible, how can we go to the malls and then shop? We also want to go out. We are also earning. Our families are earning. When we are spending so much of money on our, assistive devices and tech, we do have the money to spend on our personal needs also. So there is this whole big uh, you can say segment of society which has not been accounted for as a paying, as an earning, or as as a
Contributing.
which can actually contribute to your bottom line. This is as a consumer, but there is also the fact that we want to work. We are now, you may have come across so many news items where students are now filing cases for discrimination if they are not getting in the courses and colleges of their choice. Nobody is going to be spared, because today's generation of people with disabilities is very aware of their rights, and they are also very vocal about it. They are demanding it. So you need to include them in everything. And because also they are coming from very good institutes, they are very focused, intelligent, and they want to work. So they bring a lot of things to the table which you are missing out on if you are not being inclusive. So that's the reason why we all need to be inclusive. That's the future that we are looking for and looking at.
Your passion is palpable. And I'm so glad for your voice, and I'm so glad for your ability to articulate it the way that you just did. Um, tell me, in your corporate experience of many years, now things are changing. What would you like to take us through any experiences or anecdotes or, a part of the journey of how things were different earlier and how you have witnessed them change, or you have been the instrument of change in some situations?
Sure. So looking back at my experience, the first thing I can tell you is that there did not exist the concept of reasonable accommodation. So when we started working,
What is a reasonable
was,
accommodation?
if I have a limitation, a disability, a limitation, I'm supposed to find, my own devices. I'm supposed to work on it myself because I wouldn't get any help from anybody. Understanding was very low. However, with the law, now we have something called reasonable accommodation, and that is supposed to be provided by organization, by institution, by educational institution. So this is a big change because when I started working, I have had both my disabilities have been progressive. So I would buy my own hearing aids, and then when I started needing a wheelchair, I initially bought my own wheelchair and I started using it. No, I didn't buy it. In fact, I got it from my brother because he had a spare one, but then he needed that. And that was in, I think, 2014. Okay. And in 2015-ish, I think he had his other wheelchair broke down, which was imported, and he needed this other one. So I had to return him because he needs it more than I do. And I could walk at least around with my stick. But then it was making it very difficult for me to coordinate in office. So I went up to my bosses and I told them that I wanted an increment. So they said that we are not providing any increments because of the market and all that. But they asked me, why do you need an increment? So I said, I need an increment because I want to buy a motorized wheelchair, which is going to help me become more effective. So they understood my requirement and they didn't give me an increment, but they gave me a wheelchair which was motorized. So that was a big change I think I brought in my organization because I made my organization realize that I have special needs and that they provide me my requirement, then I'm going to be more productive and and I proved that. So when we shifted from this office to the next one, initially they forgot to build a ramp and it was on mezzanine floor with a basement and a little higher ground. So when I went there, my boss comes running out and he says, "Oh my God, Sangita, we forgot because I had been, because the construction was going on, office was shifting, so I had been asked to work from home. So maybe because I wasn't visible in office, it somehow slipped their mind. They were not able to convey it to the builder. But then they asked me to just give them 1 month time, and you won't believe it, they built a ramp for me. So this is the kind of change that I think I've been able to brought about because of my self-advocacy. And that is what I talk about in my post. And when I'm talking to younger people, I always tell them that nothing can beat your, uh, what you bring to the organization, except your silence. If you remain silent, if you do not communicate and convey your requirement, how will the other person know how they are supposed to help you or treat you? So this was
Very good.
because we didn't have the concept of reasonable accommodation. Now, though we do have a concept, however, it is still, you know, not very well understood or being adopted or implemented. So what is happening is uh, that it is there, but unless an employee who needs something, some kind of an aid or something comes up and goes to the HR or the boss or somebody and conveys to them that, look, give this to me, I need it because this can, make my productivity jump from point A to point B or point C, they won't know. So self advocacy is something which is actually required and which has proved to be a very effective weapon for me in my own workspace.
And I'm also thinking that perhaps managers are caregivers in a certain sense, and they should be on the lookout as well about their team members to advocate for as an ally and as a support for their team members who might need a reasonable accommodation or some accommodation in order to be able to deliver differentially. Um, and that's a great point, Sangita. Thank you for sharing that. I'd like for you to tell our audience who may not know you, if you're okay, about the disabilities that you've had to navigate. If you can educate us, please.
Yeah, sure. There's nothing to hide because those days are gone when people with disabilities or their families actually wanted to keep them hidden or their disabilities hidden. We have become a modern society where there is higher acceptance. So I have spinal muscular atrophy, which is a progressive disease, a condition which starts in different stages, but like there are types. So my type was it started in childhood, and I used to walk, run also a bit. I could do a lot of things. I was active, but then little by little, it progressed to such a point that, as I told you, in 2014, I started using wheelchair full time, and my hearing disability has also been progressive, and this was faster. So by class 7, 8, I was totally not able to follow what is going on in class. Unfortunately, that time we used to have these analog hearing aids, which were magnifiers. They were microphones, which would be so loud that enhance the fan, the traffic, and we call it, hearing fatigue, which I used to end up with uh, real severe migraine because of all this exhaustion, trying to understand, trying to strain hard to hear, and uh,
Mm.
so these are the two disabilities which have been with me, though I've not been that bothered with my locomotor disability because uh, this to a large extent can be overcome with, say, a wheelchair, which is motorized. In fact, when I started using the wheelchair, I stopped falling. And when I was using a stick, or when I didn't walk didn't need a stick but had a waddle, I used to fall a lot and ended up fracturing my leg invariably annually. It was an annual feature. So with the wheelchair, I became more independent. I could move around. I could do a lot of things, go to market, shop, do go to even cinema halls, though multiplexes don't have the ramp inside, but I could park my wheelchair right in front and watch a movie also. So I've been only bothered by my hearing disability because this is a communications and a social handicap, and being in the communications sector itself, uh, it was very challenging to actually work with it. And even, I mean, in the leadership role specifically, so I had come
Yeah.
up with my own devices. So I had my
Mm.
teammates and they knew that I am deaf and I'd have a problem following client conversations, or in webinars I wouldn't be able to understand what is being said because we didn't have closed captioning and all that time. So they would sit beside me and then they'll make short notes, which I would glance, and then, because I could catch something, but not everything. So also maybe God has given me a sharp intellect, so I could understand the conversation, and I really managed well. So this is how this has been my life.
As you were speaking, it was very interesting for me to connect with it because it is a different world. I was definitely in touch with my privilege as well as my blind side that, you know, I may have taken uh, for granted. And I'm grateful for the sensitivity that you have helped me build now. I do have very, very few friends, but I do have one other person who's also a guest on this podcast with a hearing challenge. And it has helped me understand your world a little better. And I'm grateful for that. I remember in our conversation, it took me some time to realize that you were looking at your phone because you were using an app. uh, Initially, I judged. I was like, why is she looking at her phone so much? Am I not an interesting person? Uh, is our conversation not fun enough? Why is she looking at her phone so much? Then I realized you have an app that is transcribing what I was saying. Um, I'm so grateful for your voice because hopefully many, many more people will now be a little more mindful and sensitive. Sangita, as a consultant who works in the accessibility space, it's not just persons with disabilities. I would think that increasingly the workforce will need to accommodate aging individuals, as well as individuals who may have special circumstances. For example, there could be somebody who's impacted by stroke, or there could be somebody who's aging and therefore unable to see as well or hear as well as they did some time ago, right? Now, organizations ideally should not just say, okay, now that you can't, you are no longer good to be employed. Right? And of course, so in your opinion, if you had a clean slate, how would you go about shaping an inclusive work culture or a workplace?
See, for me, inclusion is a 360-degree approach. And our approach to inclusion is not just people with disabilities, but like you mentioned, people with diverse abilities and requirements. Now, I am also 50, right? And I am not looking at retiring in the next 20 years if I live that long. So then I'll become a senior citizen in soon, right? So I would need workplaces or my clients' workplaces, at least because now I have my own business, to be accessible to me so that I can have meetings and conversations. So
Yes.
I do hear about, I mean, in fact, my daughter also laughingly tells me when I come back from these public audits, which I do for my, you know, social media handles. So she says, Mom, you are not meant for to, go out. You should stay at home. So, so that she teases me. But actually, many people have also come back saying that why do you need to visit a place? Now everything is online. But mind you, I don't want to be sitting at home. I am
Yeah.
a very outgoing person. I like to be out and about. I like to meet people. I like to go. I like to travel. So why would I be expected to stay back home and not go out in public because it is inaccessible? So
Yeah.
it's not my disability which is an impediment. It is the lack of accessibility which is actually stopping me. So coming back to your question, as a 360-degree approach, inclusion involves tackling behavioral or attitudinal barriers. It involves physical barriers. It involves digital barriers and also communication barriers we come across in workplaces. So how am I going to change an organization is not by holding those half an hour or 1 hour or half day, DEI workshops. What I suggest to organizations is that it needs to be a continuous interaction process where sensitization requires the requirement for sensitization is not just with the particular team with whom you want a disabled hire to work with, but the entire pipeline right from top to the bottom, external, internal. So external is your vendors, your suppliers, and all. So if you want to make your organization totally inclusive, you need to look at this 360 degrees circle of requirements for inclusion. You have to change your attitude. You have to change your workplace policies, and you may have policies on paper. So you need to translate them into action. You also need to then measure what your DEI workshops, etc., are actually giving you. Are they actually changing the attitude of people? Has your organization actually become inclusive after those workshops which you did on inclusion? Has your manager, a younger manager, does he have the sensitivity to work with an older, reportee? There are so many angles to it. All needs to be looked at, all needs to be worked on. It's not something which can be achieved in one go, but you need to work on it in a sustained manner. So once you start working on it, you will find there is a very welcome change in the attitude of your employees, your managers. I give you my own example in this. I have never in my entire corporate career felt that I am anything less than someone else, because I was highly respected for the work that I brought to my organization. So how did that happen? Because my bosses themselves respected me. They were respectful, they were caring, and that attitude percolated down into everyone. Even the office boys was so caring. They would come out, they would, I mean, I was treated as special, not because of the fact that I am a person with disability, because they felt that I am a person who is bringing something to this office which is being respected by the leaders. And so I do deserve their respect and their caring. So I did not have any problem in this organization. And I'm talking about the small sized organizations also, and also bigger ones. I have found that it's only because the leadership itself has a very sensitive, understanding, empathetic, and compassionate attitude towards their disabled employees that changes the entire culture of the organization. So that is how I would actually uh, try and make an organization inclusive, because I don't think there is any magic wand for it. You actually have to work hard. You have to work on it.
Many times I talk to people and I say, so the history of this podcast, Future Fit Corporates, is that in season 1, we wanted to take the conversation beyond Women's Day and Women's Month and say that, can we have some of these conversations through the year? I'm just thinking it is so important for caregivers, for employees who are caregivers to persons with disabilities, to see workplaces that are different, because then they will bring up children like your mother did. Because then they will know that workplaces are inclusive, they offer dignity, and it is okay for my sibling, my child, my older adult to be out in the open and independent. Because many times as caregivers, we also tend to be overprotective. We also tend to be, sometimes not, there's a balance to be struck between caring and having the dignity for someone who has some limitation. And it can be a very interesting role modeling for people to do. I had a question for you. Which, according to you, was your biggest disability? Being a woman, having a physical limitation, or an attitudinal bias that you can or cannot do something?
See, as far as my professional life is concerned, I didn't have, I didn't find my being a woman or a person with disability any kind of obstacle because I fought. I didn't sit back. I started working in a very, very patriarchal system in a place like Patna because I had to return back from Delhi. I could not actually get a job that I would have ideally liked to. And what I got, that was also very difficult for me to sustain being alone in Delhi. My family was that time in Patna. My father was stationed there. So it was my safety and security, and the fact that we did not have the accessible transportation system like low floor buses. That time I was walking, but I needed low floor buses and I needed low floor autos. In fact, buses I couldn't choose because so much of dhakka mukki, I could just fall. I used to fall because I don't have strength. So invariably, I would be, stuck outside office in CP and then in the Pikaji Kama place. And you can understand around 9 when everybody has left. It's so deserted. It's so unsafe for a woman, a young woman specifically. So my father asked me to return home. And he said that we'll find something for you here. So I went back. So it wasn't actually my gender which was an obstacle. It was the lack of accessibility which became an obstacle initially. Then when I went back home, I went to the boondocks. I mean, that time Patna was so backward. And but we did have some very good organizations, very cosmopolitan organizations with which I started working. They had a World Bank funded project and all, and I was working with the managing director over there as the executive assistant. So then, when I joined Hindustan Times, Patna, again a very patriarchal society, there were only men and women were assigned to morning desk. They had to only edit AFP, I mean the foreign news, which was already edited. You just had to do little bit of changing, maybe a headline here and there, and do it. I put my foot down. I said, I'm not going to work on this morning desk. So I went to the editor and said, I want to work with the boys in the evening. So he said, okay, fine. He was very indulgent. And in fact, before that, I had been working as in charge of the magazine section, but I had worked there for 2 years and something, and I was got bored. I mean, because I can do things very fast. So my, I keep on, maybe that's my personality, need challenging uh, assignments to keep my energy up. So then I started working in the main desk in the morning. Then I went to him and I said, I'm not working there anymore unless you put me in the evening shift. He said, I know we need people like you there. So let me make arrangements. So they made
Nice.
arrangement for me and for me to be dropped back home at night. So that's
Nice.
started. But then we had more, computerization happening in Patna, and all the ladies started blaming me for, planting this idea
Interesting.
that women can work in night shift. And they were
Interesting.
up in arms against me and against the Patna management that they don't want to work in night shift. And the management said, if she can do it, why can't you do
Oh
it?
no.
I became the most hated figure that time. And finally, everybody had to start working in the night shift because computerization meant that we didn't need the morning shift. So the morning was dismantled. So, as you can see from this example, gender has never been a problem. If you have gender, if you are a woman, but if you are a determined woman, then you will achieve do whatever you want to. Coming to my disability, uh, I didn't find my disability much of an issue early on, except for a few people, those who were like the nasty selves. But otherwise, uh, my disabilities, I overcame them Uh, because I was pretty good at my job. I could work very well. So and what I couldn't hear, I told you I had my own way of, for example, when I was working as a reporter and a desk editor. So I used to record all the conversations, all the interviews which I did. And then my second sister, she used to transcribe it for me. And then
Oh,
I used to
wow.
do my stories.
Oh,
And
wow.
then, yes, and then in fact later on, my current husband was my colleague that time. I mean, later on he had joined the organization, so he started helping with the transcription thing because my sister had got married. So I didn't let anything come in the way of my ambition and my desires to
Beautiful.
be a successful journalist or a successful corporate employee. So I always found a way. So what I'm driving at is that nothing can be an obstacle as long as you are smart enough to work around them.
It fills my heart as I listen to you. I I'm sure it will inspire as it inspires many people. So thank you for that. While there is much to be said that individuals need to be of a certain quality and a certain assertion and a certain leadership, I think there is some stuff to be said about systems being enabling as well. And I think it is really important for leaders and leaders at various levels to think about how the future of work is changing and how can organizations be future fit so that we can systemically support people with all kinds of abilities, because there is beauty in diverse perspectives. There is also innovation in diverse perspectives. So what do you think could be the role of so you said that inclusion is a thought process, it's an ongoing thing, and that's within an organization. What can leaders do outside their organization? Because it can sometimes be very difficult to do something only inside. You need the industry support. So, what could be something that people do as across companies or in industry bodies?
There are many things, and just let me reflect a little back to my last answer. Now, as you can see, I am speaking from a place of privilege because I have been given the best possible education. And my own
Yes.
personality has been shaped by my upbringing, my schooling, my education, and everything. I have overcome systemic barriers because I have that kind of a personality. But that does not mean that we do not remove the systemic barriers and make it easier for us. Why
100%.
should we have to struggle to achieve the same thing which a non-disabled person does it very easily,
That's
right?
right.
So for personally, my disability or my gender has not been an impediment, but it's not true for everybody. We come from different backgrounds, we come with different mindset, we come with different personalities, and everything is shaped by our upbringing, our society. I've been fortunate, very fortunate. I had, I had extremely progressive parents. I had a great example at home in my own brother, who also has SMA, my elder brother. So
Yes.
so to expect people with disabilities to to work with a system which is so inaccessible, and then
Yeah.
praise them for achieving whatever they do. Even if they get a first division, then there'll be a huge big, maybe a media report which will say a person who was blind gave this exam and she has secured so this percent.
Why?
Why? If your exam system is such that right before exam Students with visual disabilities are scrambling, looking around for scribes, and they don't find qualified people. If your schools don't have special educators, if your school is non-inclusive, it has so many barriers, it doesn't have ramp, doesn't have accessible toilet. Just a recent news report which said that 90 plus thousand students in UP, in I think Pilibhit in UP, in decades, for the first time, they were given desk and chairs. Now, if this is the scenario in schools, primary schools, do you think people with children with disabilities are part of this education system or can be part of this education system? Now, if amongst them only one person, one student, because of maybe his parental support or NGO support or some support, is able to come out of that and do something, we make them an inspirational figure and say, wow, look at this person, how great it is. He'll be given an award, an achiever, maybe a national award, and all that will come. And we forget our role in that. Society forgets, government forgets that they have not made our systems inclusive enough for us to also have an easy life. So I wouldn't say, I mean, this is not, we cannot generalize. We cannot generalize because we come from different social groups, different
That's right.
strata, different backgrounds, different mindsets, different disabilities, and each disability is itself a spectrum. So you can see just generalizing is not enough. Now, coming to that question which you asked, going beyond organizational roles, what can leaders do? I think they can do a lot. There are leaders I have been in contact with, those who are now at the peak of their career, quitting their jobs, and like they are joining the social sector because they want to help the underprivileged through their experience. And
Yeah.
you may not quit, but you can volunteer. You can, for example, we have organizations through the CSR arms, they adopt gardens, right? They maintain these public gardens and monuments. Adopt a school, make it totally inclusive. Adopt a metro station, ensure last mile, first mile connectivity. You can do so many things beyond your organizational role. And you can also motivate. I think organizations have this, volunteer something,
Yeah.
employees are supposed to volunteer for social work.
Yes.
So you can, encourage your employees to volunteer and work in the sector where people, those who are educated, enlightened, are required. For example, I mean, I just want to bring this fact to light. Till now, the focus of government and NGOs, those who work in the disability sector, has been on, skilling people with disabilities because they don't get educational opportunities. So the skilling that is done is for very entry level, low paying skilling jobs. Right now, the world has changed totally. In this era of AI, we keep on hearing about how entry level repetitive jobs, all that is going to AI, right? So where do you think all this skilling is going to end up? I mean, after all the skilling, whatever they are learning, if they are learning like weaving baskets and making chairs and all, that kind of skilling is not going to get them into the corporate sector, right? They'll always be in low paying jobs. And then this disability and poverty is a vicious cycle which continues because you are born with a disability, you didn't get education, you didn't get a proper job, so you ended up in a low skill job. Your earning is so low, but your costs are very high because you need all those aids, you need your hearing aid, you need your wheelchair, you need this, that, and you actually cannot depend on government to provide you everything. If you know the kind of pension that people with disabilities get, you will be surprised because it's not going to be sufficient for even 1 week. So you can see that this becomes a cycle. Now imagine this person with disability, a woman or a man, getting married. And a society says that a disabled person will only marry a disabled person. Why? Because no non-disabled person wants to marry a disabled person. So you bring two people with disabilities, and that too you have those mass marriages happening. These two people will get married, they will have children. How are they going to ensure that their family rises above the poverty line? Right? So, and especially if you have disabilities which are progressive, because also even if you don't have progressive disabilities, as you age, there are other problems. You have arthritis while you keep sitting in a wheelchair, you have bone deformation, you end up with diabetes, lifestyle diseases, everything. So we need people to help in the sector. We need leaders to step into the sector and then, bring in their business insight in how to make the disability sector more professional and ensure that people with disabilities rise above.
So you make a compelling case, Sangita. And uh, while this is a nice to do thing and leaders should do it, right? Encourage their team members to volunteer. But you would have heard this many times, as much as I have heard this, that corporates or businesses are in the business of business. And if you are in the business of business or making profits, then why should you do these nice to do things? What's the business case for it? What's
The
your view?
business case for working, for ensuring that people with disabilities also join the mainstream is to make them, you know, tax-paying members of society. If we don't educate people with disabilities and they are left as, dole seekers, they are dependent on the state, on the government, then we are paying more and more taxes to actually help the government sustain this huge big mass of, underserved society. So there are
Good
demands that
one.
they want to increase the pension. So to increase the pension, or yeah, whether it is any kind of pension, old age pension or pension to people with disabilities, the government doesn't produce money, it taxes us. So we end up paying more and more taxes. So I think that can be the biggest business case for
I
for
love it.
yeah, because today they have 2% of CSR, it may increase to 4% or 5%, and then it's going to eat into their bottom line. The more people dependent on the state, the more taxes we have to pay, cough up, and give to the government. As regards the company, if when you're bringing in people with disabilities, you are also bringing in talent, because I know, I know, because what I have given to my companies, my bosses are, if you talk to any of them, they will say that I was the best employee because I didn't just work hard. I brought a lot of intelligence to what I did. I brought business. I brought clients to them. If I can do it, I think any number of other people with disabilities can also be like me. If they get the kind of education that I was given, if they are given that kind of, at least support, if not the from the family, if the family is underserved, underprivileged, if they're getting support, they're getting good schools, they're getting inclusive schools, there's a pipeline from schools to colleges to professional institutes and then to corporates. What is happening, and I've heard it on good authority, that though even IIMs and all have some percentage of people with disabilities, but when it comes to campus placement, corporates are not hiring them. They are still struggling to get a job. So what you are effectively doing is you're closing your door to talent. There's a lot of talent which you are actually not looking at. You are looking at the disability. You're not looking at the individual, what he or she can bring to you. You're also not looking at the fact that there is something called, a loyalty. Because what happens with us is our, and I'm going to be very frank, I'm not going to be, but covering it up. We stay in organizations longer and we give our best because we are always afraid that if we don't do our best, we may be the first ones to lose a job. Secondly, we stay in organizations longer because we don't have that many alternatives. So if you are hiring a person with disability, you are effectively, saving on all the attrition which may happen if you have someone else. Because every 2 years, if they find something different with better paying, they move on. I'm being very, very, very frank with you, telling you the truth on the ground.
That is actually true. That is actually, there is enough data about it, and what you're
Yes.
saying, I would support that. Um, Caregiver Saathi is about supporting individuals who are caregivers, and we know that there is the population that is caregivers in the workforce is only on the rise, although we feel that not too many organizations or leaders recognize the fact that employees are distracted or they are less productive on account of their caregiving responsibilities. There are as high as 70 to 80% of employees who have caregiving responsibilities one way or the other. And organizations, especially in South Asia, are yet to recognize this fact. Can you help draw a parallel between caregiving responsibilities and persons with disabilities, and how they might be similar or dissimilar in terms of being valuable to organizations?
Absolutely. So going back to the example of my mother, she quit her job because she had to do the caregiving part. But in today's world, in 2025, if we expect a caregiver to quit their jobs and because they can't do justice to an office which is structured in a legacy model, then I think we are doing a great disservice and injustice to the nation. Because caregivers are also very talented women, mostly, isn't it? There are very rare cases
Yes.
of men giving up their job to take care of the child who is maybe a disabled or maybe some elderly person who needs 24
Yes.
into 7 care. So again, like I said, we are closing our doors to a very, very talented population by not looking at their requirements. Today's corporates cannot be just extractive. You cannot expect us to give, employees to give. It is now to be a give and a take. You need to be empathetic. You need to support us, provide the support we need to give you what you want. And we will give you more than what you want. I got a wheelchair. I gave back to my organization more than the cost of the wheelchair. If they hadn't given me a wheelchair, I would have been stuck in one place, right? Wouldn't be possible for me to actually, as a group editor and managing editor, have to interact with the design, with the client, with this. It wouldn't have been possible for me. I would be just stuck in one place. So I'm giving this example because with caregivers, they're also stuck because they don't have a choice. Give them a choice, give them the support. Like you, there is reasonable accommodation for people with disabilities. Should be reasonable accommodation for caregivers also. They can have flexible work hours. Maybe on days when they are required at home, they can work from home, right? You can have flexible work hours, meaning some maybe if there's a husband and wife and they are like they have a child with disability. So I didn't have a child with disability, but because my husband and I both were in media, and I was working night shift and he was working morning till late in the night. But then I opted out because of my own health issues plus the small child, and because my parents had shifted out to the lack of support system. So when we came back to Delhi, we came to an understanding that I'd work normal 9 to 5 jobs and he'd work night shift. And we took care of the child in between, right? But today you don't need this kind of work scenario. You have, you know, you can work on from anywhere with your laptops, And then there's
Yeah.
AI, and there's so many assistive things going on. So we also need to look at the needs of the caregiver. Supposing they have a small child, do you know that as part of accessibility requirements, all corporates also supposed to have these family rooms. They
Mm.
need to have quiet spaces for neurodivergent employees and individuals. Now, supposing, like, I think some bigger ones have the creche. Now, if you have a creche and you have somebody trained to also handle children with disabilities, then your employee is so comfortable, she'll come, leave the child, to give her 100% to the job, then go pick up the child and go back home, right?
Yeah.
So that kind of a support, if if provided, I think will open such a huge talent sector, whether it is
Yeah.
caregiver, whether it is a disabled employee. And the ROI, because as you said, businesses do business for business. Even I'm doing business for business, right? But then with my understanding, I know that if I'm flexible and all my employees are working from in their own space, I don't have a structure where I am asking them and clock watching, you come at 9 and you leave at 6 o'clock. No, I give flexibility, and you won't believe me, as a small startup which has just started its journey, I'm reaping benefits of my own processes. Why can't bigger organizations do the same? I have also been recipient of this flexibility. I wasn't asked to come to office at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock, because they understood that for me, getting up in the morning and getting ready requires help. It takes me time to I mean, I wake up at 6, but I have to wait for my help to come. Need help to get ready, to go to the washroom and everything. So by the time I can reach office is not before 10, 10:30, sometimes even 11, depending upon my circumstances. I was never asked why am I not, punching at this time. But then I stayed till 8 o'clock. There were times when I stayed in office till 12 working. I gave back. This is how we need to structure our future fit organization, which, which have place to accommodate everyone's need.
My next question, but you have addressed it so beautifully already, which is, what's your dream for a future fit corporate? A place that accommodates everyone's needs and is, looking out for each other or looking beyond what is just visible. Uh, it's such a lovely vision to aspire for. Um, what are your wishes for Caregiver Saathi, and how would you like to bring this conversation to a close? Because this is a topic we would like to start, but I'm sure we can have a very, very long conversation.
Absolutely, because as you said, I'm very passionate about it. And
Yes.
um, as far as caregiver Sati is concerned, I think and I believe that you are doing a great work by bringing to the public, you know, consciousness the needs, not just the need, but also the talents of caregivers, and how they, through the conversations that you have, you're highlighting that it's not as per their personal choice that they are caregivers. It's the circumstances that make you caregivers. It's not that they don't want to give 100% to their job. It's because they are forced into a place which is very stifling, in fact, because they have to suppress their own ambitions, their own desires, maybe even curb their freedom to take care of someone who needs them. And organizations, society, everybody needs to understand that this is the situation. For us, I mean, I've been in this place where I had a junior who was a divorcee looking after two kids.
Hmm.
So that was also a problem for her, because being a single mother, she had to take care of her children, not because they were disabled, but because she was a single mother. She needed a flexibility. I got flexibility from my organization. So I learned that I can also give flexibility to my subordinate and expect her to respect that flexibility and then give me back her 100%. So there is the thing called trust, and corporates need to trust their employees, invest in them, not just giving them those the you have these days in corporate, you have the gym and you have yoga sessions and all that. That is all good on your compliance checklist, but actual care goes beyond that. Actual care goes when you understand each individual's specific requirements and then provide try to fulfill that requirement. As I say, reasonable accommodation. That doesn't mean that you have to go out of your way to do something, but as far as it's reasonable, you must do it. You must ensure that you are giving that reasonable support to enable your employee to give the 100%. And I think I have spoken a lot.
So it seems like reasonable accommodation is a good investment, not a cost.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And thank you for highlighting that. Grateful for your voice, grateful for your passion, and looking forward to together shaping many future fit corporates. Sangita, I'm very, very grateful for this conversation.
I'm very grateful to you for this opportunity you have given me to come talk about so many things which always occupy my head, my heart. Um, I'm a very passionate person when there's a cause which I feel very strongly for, and that is what made me a development journalist.
And my deep respect and affection for your mother, your father, and your sister who transcribed for you, your husband, and your little daughter who is also a caregiver in her own right. So
Absolutely. She does. She does step in when her father isn't around, and every few minutes she'll pop in and say, "Mom, you need anything? Mom, you need anything?" And I find it so irritating. I have to go away. If I need anything, I'll call you.
yeah,
So
on that note,
thank you so much, Bhavna, for this lovely conversation. Looking forward to, as you said, working on sensitizing more organizations to become future fit, because it is not just about technology, it also includes human emotions, human understanding, human intellect.
for sure. So well said.
Bye
Thank
bye.
you. Thank you for watching this episode of Future Fit Corporates. If today's conversation resonated with you, don't let it end here. Join the Future Fit Corporates Club or the FFC Club. Explore our full dossier and discover powerful blogs from our past speakers. Let's move beyond inclusion as a buzzword. Let's make diverse experiences, especially experiences of caring for others, caregiving, a leadership strength. Together, we can truly build not just a caring world, but future fit workplaces. Until next time, take care and let's keep the conversation on.